This war from its origins is rotting. It's rotting. And if you don't understand where it came from, you're not going to understand how and why we ultimately need to change this thing, right? Everything you want to know about heroin and cocaine and methamphetamine, both about people who can use them without having a problem and how devastating that addiction can be, everything you want to know, all you need to know is to look at alcohol, look at tobacco, look at all the bad stuff we know about alcohol, more associated with violent behavior, reckless sexual behavior, accidents on the roads than any illicit drug, right? Look at tobacco, cigarettes. Nothing is as addictive as cigarettes. Nothing is as addictive as cigarettes, right? When they survey heroin addicts and they ask heroin addicts, what's the toughest drug to quit? What do most heroin addicts say? Cigarettes, right? Combine those two, alcohol and tobacco, and imagine if they were illegal. And you want to know about meth addiction? You want to know about crack and cocaine addiction, everything else addiction? You can get it all just by understanding what we've seen with alcohol addiction, cigarette addiction, and imagining if those things were criminal. Now, I know I'm whipping you around here because someone's like, oh my God, meth. Yeah, meth. You should not be smoking methamphetamine. You shouldn't be injecting methamphetamine. It's not a healthy or good thing to do. But when we think that there's something radically different between being addicted to that and being addicted to alcohol, Not when it comes to violence, addiction, a whole range of other things like that, right? And meanwhile, marijuana? Can you get addicted to marijuana? Yes, you can. You can get addicted to anything. Right? You can get addicted to gambling, you can get addicted to video games, you can get addicted to making money, you get addicted to sex, you get addicted to running, you get addicted to things. And addiction, I mean, just as a little side, let me just diverge here and talk about addiction. My definition of addiction is a little unique, but it's the one I believe makes the most sense. It's not perfect. Is that addiction equals dependence plus problems. Addiction equals dependence plus problems. What does I mean by that? I mean, you can be dependent on a drug so that if you stop taking it, you'll get sick or die or be uncomfortable. But it's not an addiction unless it's causing harm to you and your life and to people around you. If you're a diabetic on insulin, you're dependent on insulin. You're not addicted to it. If you got a cholesterol issue and you're taking a statin or something, you're dependent upon that drug. You're not addicted to it. If you're a person who was caught up with being in street heroin and you're now taking methadone, right, which is an oral form of an opiate, you are not addicted to methadone. You are dependent upon it. In every one of the cases, that insulin or that methadone or that statin or whatever it is basically a medication. And if it's not causing a problem for your life, you are not addicted to it, even if you need it every day. The second element of addiction is problems. If your dependence is causing problems, well, that's another story. If you're dependent upon cigarettes and it's going to give you cancer, that becomes an addiction. If you're dependent on any other drug that's undermining your ability to live a healthy life, that becomes an addiction, right? But it's important to understand there's two ways that you can have a problem. One type of problem is that the drug actually does things bad to your body. You take enough cocaine a long period of time, not good for your heart. Take enough alcohol a long period of time, not good for your liver. Take cigarettes, nicotine in the form of smoking it, not good for your lungs and a lot of other sorts of stuff, right? One nice thing, by the way, about opiates, including heroin, is that if you have a clean legal supply and you have a clean legal supply where you know the dose you're taking every day, you can take it and live to be 99. Right? It doesn't destroy your bodily organs, right? It may make you constipated. It may also make you less sensitive to physical and emotional pain, but it's not going to destroy your body the way cigarettes, alcohol, or cocaine will. Okay? So the other type of problem, as opposed to the drug itself, the harm the drug can do to you because of what it does to your body, the other type of problem stems from the laws and the policies. Marijuana is not addictive for most people who use it. But getting marijuana, possessing marijuana, can create problems with the law in a way that really becomes difficult. Somebody who's into heroin, as I said, if they have a clean legal supply, not recommending it, but it's not, you can drive a car, lead a normal life, have a job, all this sort of stuff, right? But when all of a sudden the only way to get heroin is to buy it at black market prices on the street, sometimes from people you don't know, and the drug is of unknown potency and purity, and you don't have safe places to use it, or maybe a clean needle or whatever, then you're taking a drug which can be somewhat innocuous if it's in a pure state and turning it into a very dangerous thing. So for me, addiction equals dependence plus problems. Part of what we're trying to do with drug policy reform is to remove the destructiveness, not just of the government's policies, but also the destructiveness of the drugs themselves. Okay? Okay. So I know I'm spinning you around here, but I'm going to keep doing it, because if I come out of here and you are all really confused, it's good. And if I'm saying stuff that sometimes is making you feel because you're thinking about your friend who's like addicted to meth or this, that's good. Just don't shut down and keep listening, right? I mean, let me give you an example. Sometimes we think, how many of you think it would be a good idea to prohibit cigarettes? Raise your hands. Ban cigarettes.
Put that hand down.
Right? Okay. How many think it would be a bad idea to prohibit cigarettes? How many aren't sure? Okay, I see a lot of tentativeness right here, right? We did a survey, a poll about 5-10 years ago. We asked people, how many of you would support a federal law prohibiting cigarettes in the next 5 or 10 years? And 45% of Americans said yes to prohibiting cigarettes federally next 5 or 10 years, right? And the remarkable thing was, the two groups which were the highest, like 58% in favor? One was like conservative Republican Christians or something, which doesn't surprise you that much. The other group was young people. The two groups that almost never line up on public opinion polls, young people and older conservative Republican Christians, right? And why was, I think with young people what it was you're already getting used to, bans here, but, they say here a ban, there a ban, everywhere a ban, why not, ban everywhere, right? I mean, you can't smoke it here, can't smoke, why not? Without thinking about the consequences. So then the question becomes, imagine if we could ban cigarettes. Imagine we did ban cigarettes. What would happen? Prohibit them. Make them like marijuana's been or like cocaine. Well, I think part of what would happen is that the number of people who smoke would go down. And the price would go up, right? When you make something illegal, you make it a little harder to get, not so much for young people, but for adults, right? And the price goes up, right? So we'd probably see some drop, also not just in cigarette consumption, but in a drop in lung cancer, respiratory diseases, things like that. Good thing, right? What else would happen?
Nobody would die.
We'd still have millions of people, 10 million people smoking cigarettes. Where would they get it now? The black market. You said it, right? We began the black market. Who would be selling it? The big evil tobacco companies or the new tobacco trafficantes in Colombia, Mexico, and in America and all the rest of the world, right? Would we have immense black market violence related to the tobacco market? You bet. Would we now see a whole new flow of hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people being arrested for tobacco law violations and being sent to new federal, state prisons and local jails for tobacco law violations? You bet we would. We could double the American prison population. Yeah, right? What else would we see? We'd have a new federal agency, the Tobacco Enforcement Administration, the TEA, right? Employing undercover agents and wiretapping and surveillance, and there would be all sorts of incentives for all of you to drop a dime on your tobacco-consuming fellow schoolmates, right? We'd have a new surveillance society on this stuff, right? We would see massive shipments of tobacco coming from Latin America. Maybe the state of South Carolina was at sea again, right? Just so they would have the right to grow this stuff, right? So think about the consequences. We tend to think something's bad, let's ban it. But if you ban it, the good that you do may be dramatically outweighed by the bad that happens as a result of the prohibition policies. It's not the direction that we want to go. Conversely, if you imagine if drugs, cocaine. Cocaine in the 1890s was widely used. Coca-Cola had cocaine in it until 1900, and so far as we know was no more addictive than Coca-Cola is with caffeine in it today. A lot of this is about the dose. If you're smoking or injecting some powder, almost whatever it is, bad idea. It shoots to the brain. It's harder to control your use. If you're taking in a low level, the way people were drinking that Coca-Cola in 1898 with a little cocaine in it, or the Van Mariani, the Bordeaux wine with a Coke infusion, pretty innocuous. Those Indians in Bolivia, Peru, and Colombia chewing that coca leaf all day, they're essentially releasing a slow drip of cocaine into their body. And when the World Health Organization analyzed their use, they concluded that there was essentially no negative consequences of this coca chewing, even though it was releasing cocaine into their body each day. Why? Because it was coming in so slow doses, little doses. It was essentially having a few cups of coffee a day. And actually the coca leaf itself contains vitamins which are beneficial. So it was only a little bit of lime they used to get the cocaine out of coca. Bottom line, the dose is the poison or the dose is the healthy piece of this thing. Right? Understanding that, right? There have been societies in which alcohol was illegal from 1919 to 33, when marijuana was still legal in many places, right? Other societies around the world have flipped it around. One of the crazy things about our history and much of Western history is that somehow we landed up with two of the most dangerous, deadly substances being the legal ones. There is not every single independent scientific advisory group ever to look at this issue has concluded that most of the illicit drugs, illegal drugs, are not as dangerous as alcohol and tobacco. Notwithstanding the fact that most people can use alcohol responsibly and do so, notwithstanding the fact that only 1 out of every 3 people who use tobacco will get addicted and will end up dying as a result of it, right? Are you believing me so far? Because I will tell you this, if you don't believe me, I will make a wager with any one of you, right, that if you invest the time and the energy to read deeply, read the history, read the science, read everything, every single thing I'm saying to you is true. I stand by it. I didn't start off as an activist. I started off as an academic and as a scholar and as a PhD, researching and reading everything I possibly could and studying this issue all around the world. And one of the reasons I was so fascinated to get into this stuff was because the more I read, the more I realized how the stuff you read about the history and the science and the economics and how we got here pointed you towards a drug policy in this direction, but that all the politics and public opinion was driving us in this direction. There was this tremendous disparity between what good drug policy has been, could be, would be, and what people were saying we needed to do. Now the consequences of that disparity, it depends where you live. I'd point out, let me just point 3 really big ones. The first one is, you look at the violence in Mexico and parts of Central America, and in the past in Colombia and Peru, and now growing in West Africa and parts of Asia, and sometimes in the Caribbean. And you realize that Mexico, with almost 100,000 dead in the drug wars of the last decade, and all of the incredible levels of violence and crime and corruption, degradation of social order, and narcos taking over cities and states, it's like Chicago during the days of Al Capone and Prohibition, times 50. What's going on in Mexico today is not a result of drugs. It's the result of a failed prohibitionist strategy. In the same way that was going on in Chicago in the 20s was not the result of alcohol, it was the result of a failed prohibitionist strategy.